Well, thank you for coming to tonight's session about 23andMe. And the goal of this session is that with 23andMe now filing bankrupt, there's two parts for those of us that are tracing and tracking out of Frederick, Maryland. So one, there's a lot of people who have taken a 23andMe test, but then the second part is the Frederick, Maryland Catoctin Furnace Project is using that data for us to try to track the people who were in the cemetery. And we were using 23andMe for that research part. So their results in partnering with them was supposed to be an opportunity for us to determine if we were matching them. So for those of us that are connected to the Catoctin Furnace Project, we have a heightened sense of importance as to using 23andMe and gathering this data. But before you delete your profile, I wanted to make sure I could walk through. So there's a two-part session. One part is going to be walking through the 23andMe, how to get everything out of this application before you delete the data. And then the second part will be talking about the Catoctin Furnace DNA matches and the different testing platforms that have that data so that we can, based on what I'm learning, understand how to interpret it. So let's go. So 23andMe, basically, in order for you to know, many of us take the test just like Ancestry, MyHeritage. But then 23andMe has this historical matches component, and the Catoctin Furnace people that were in the identified ancestors that were in the cemetery, those results would show if you had a 30 centimorgan match to them to be your direct descendant of them. And then recently they lowered it where we do have someone in our Catoctin Furnace group who has a match as a distant cousin. So it's the historical matches, and it was if you subscribe to it, you would see if you were, but many of us were not still related to them. However, and there are other testing platforms that also are using that data. So first, number one, when you log into 23andMe, there's the ability to be able to sort your matches, as you can see on this screen. So you're going to be looking at all of your DNA relatives, everyone that you're related to. And this is showing how to sort it. And one of the ways you can sort, but based on a high percentage, you can sort it to see the segments. And what can be important by looking at the segments, if they have fewer segments and depending on the ability to see that information, which I don't think 23andMe is providing, the chromosome and the segments, we would have been able to see exactly where in DNA we match them. But it's helpful to see the segments, but it's not so helpful to not be able to see the chromosomes that go along and correspond with those segments. One of the things I'm encouraging everyone to do is to print your list of matches. For me, I have 60 pages, and it's probably 20 to 25 people on those pages. I think this should be but I'm encouraging you at a minimum to go to the last page, print forward. Because what I just paid attention to preparing this presentation is when 23andMe is showing me 10th cousin, 9th cousin. And I just did a talk on understanding at what generation is this cousin relating to you. So actually to see 9th cousin twice removed, that means this is my 11th cousin match. And I believe that is a 7th great grandparent connection. So to be able to understand that 23andMe is sharing with us matches that go back this far, they're not minimizing the lower centimorgans, and at least we can see the people that we are being related to. And if possible, some of these people's are Ancestry or another testing platform, then we will be able to take advantage of connecting with these people, understanding that they are they are matching us very, through our ancestry that's very old. So in recap, I'm recommending that to print your matches out of 23andMe, go to the last page, print forward, because I just paid attention to the fact that I'm seeing ninth cousins twice removed, and a 10th cousin. And so I'm going to be putting out all of these pages. So at a minimum, I can possibly see their names. And as other people are, I'm working with other cousins, right? So that Wiggins name is probably connected to me through my Wiggum. So if I don't see them in Ancestry, but someone else does, this is just another visual that lets me see that DNA I am matching. I'm just not matching in Ancestry where they're not showing the low centimorgans. So number one, print your masters, and I'm suggesting you start from the oldest to the most current, because we rarely see cousins that are this old and Ancestry matches that are this old in these applications. Second, print your summary and hapilog group report. Where you find that, it's on your dashboard. It has that button that's right there. It says report summary. When you click this report summary, you're going to be able to see your genetic breakdown. And at the very bottom, it's going to show your hapilog group that 23andMe is saying that you belong to. So I'm going to show you different reports that 23andMe has. And it does provide different information. So for me, it's worth it to be able to see these separate breakdown here with this ancestry composition report. So print that particular report out there. Next, on the home page, where I'm highlighting next to overview, there is another option that says all reports. Under all reports, that's just another presentation of your genetic breakdown. But when you click on those links, there is a separate report that specifically, I'll show that later, but it's specifically going to tell you about that region and how you're matching them. So whether you print it here or you print it after you click on the link, I'm just highlighting the differences in some of these different reports that definitely you want to make sure that you have out of the application. Next is viewing your ancestry composition. So again, this is from the home page. Viewing your ancestry composition. That is going to show you this breakdown based on countries and just your overall country composition. And this is just another visual where you can click on the country and then see a report. So this is the dashboard of this. So the report view you're seeing here is just a visual of that. So again, you can pick and choose what presentation of your genetic makeup you can print. But that's what this print option here is sharing. When you click on a country from that left panel, what I'm going to show you is not going to be sub-Saharan African, but I chose to go to the bottom of my list, and I chose Jamaica was at the bottom. So when I clicked on Jamaica itself, this is telling me that Jamaica has 14 administrative regions. I share DNA with 23andMe participants who most frequently report their ancestry were from the following 9 regions. So 23andMe is kind of cool where you can click Jamaica and then I can see all of the cousins that said they have Jamaica in their tree. So this is a cool visual of that country that I haven't seen in large scale in some of the other applications. So before you hit print, you can print this out and at least be able to see the country in this map of the country. And on the left is highlighting the areas in that country where your DNA matches are coming from. Then when you hit print on this page, it does the same thing. It's going to print that makeup, overall makeup for you. Now, under health, under ancestry composition, the first tab was summary. When you click the second one that says scientific details, so each of these different sections is providing you different sets of data. you want to make sure you're going to print this out. So when you hit print off this page, now it's going to show you all of the regions. And as you can see here under West African, for me, Nigerian has 6 separate regions, but my highest match is Nigeria and not the other areas. So this is a really cool breakdown to be able to see where in those countries they have smaller regions or smaller areas. You're going to be able, based on your report, to see who are your DNA matches to those areas. So I know I'm not Eastern people, Igbo people. I'm in Nigeria. And then Ghanaian, Liberian, and Sierra Leonean, there is 12%. I don't see where it is, but so maybe it's a higher percentage that it's reporting, but based on these smaller regions, none of the people are from there. So this is a cool report to be able to print as well. And because it gives more details instead of the other reports from earlier. Now we're going to be looking at on the home page, instead, you're going to look at, instead of composition, now we're going to look at DNA painting. The DNA painting to view this report. Right underneath your ancestry composition wheel, right below that is DNA painting, view the report. What I really like about this is that every chromosome is represented. On the left-hand side are the countries, and they're color-coded. So this is my 100% view. And I'm going to print that out. So I printed that out already because now this is telling me based on my chromosomes and the segments within those chromosomes where that country orientation is being represented. But as you click on one of the countries on the left, it now is going to show you the representation for the country you selected. So this is probably based on the color code, the Senegambian and Guyanian, because of that color. That's a dark color, purple. So this is showing me that paternal chromosome is on the top, maternal is on the bottom. So on chromosome 2, that's my paternal, but on chromosome 3, that's my maternal. So this is going to help you to understand that when you have DNA matches and it's saying to you they're in these countries, this is why you have to do the work to know if it's paternal connection or maternal connection. And now some of them, depending on what you choose, is both. But once we can eventually, as we advance, get into looking at the segments, now we'll plug in that, especially in GEDmatch, the segments start the segment in, and then now we may be able to try to discern exactly what country this person may be coming from or how they're matching us. When I clicked on European, this is a paternal match on chromosome 15 and nowhere else. So if I ever have chromosome 15 and is European, according to 23andMe, that's going to be on my paternal side for European. But again, I do know that I have European, and I do have this high percentage of 7%. Based on the research you guys are seeing that I'm doing, we're connecting to so many Europeans, whether it's men or whether it's female. It astounds me that it's only 7%. So it's just interesting to try to discern exactly how much European is making up this percentage based on all of the research we're getting out of our DNA matches. Oh, okay. So that was my report out of 23andMe, because 23andMe didn't have a great deal of information. The chromosome browser, we can see our matches, we can message our people, you may want to print your messages, but the core that I was most concerned with are the areas that I highlighted. I have not signed up for the health, so that may be something you may want. I have not signed up for that, so I have not really communicated with a lot of people out of here. But now that I'm printing my matches, and then depending on how long I let this data set, I might try to reach out to people. But you don't know that now everyone's hearing that they're bankrupt. if they're going to be around. So that is the 23andMe component of my talk for tonight, which is short. So this is a talk tonight on the Catoctin Furnace, the origins of the Catoctin Furnace descendants. And on one hand, we have different testing platforms that's providing us information and trying to understand what this information really means. Because when the Catoctin group first started, and when I first came into the group last year, everyone was doing one testing platform, MyTrueAncestry. Then the society they chose for scientific purposes that they wanted to align with 23andMe. So we wanted to make sure we were in 23andMe to see if we had matches. But now, more recently, we're seeing matches out of FTDNA. So all of these testing platforms are getting this data set, analyzing this data set, and putting it in their applications. And the question is, what does it mean? Because each of them are testing the data sets differently. So the overview. So I'm going to touch on MyTrueAncestry overview, 23andMe, FTDNA's mtDNA overview, and then I'm going to show a comparison of all of those based on my matches, because I am in all three of these systems. So when I compare my data sets between all three, I'm now being able to see a picture that I had noticed before, only looking at looking at them individually. So, MyTrueAncestry for the Catoctin Furnace results, and this is my results. So last year in September, the society had a meeting, and one of the presidents or one of the definitely chief developers came to our meeting and was explaining how the data set that they received from Harvard is the same data set that 23andMe had, and how they had scientists that was analyzing this data, and this is the information that was being presented. Because for a little while, no one had confidence in the data set and the representation of the data in their website that we were seeing. So on MyTrueAncestry, from what I can tell, they analyzed 28 matches. And for most of us in the Facebook group, the Catoctin group, who've used MyTrueAncestry, many people are matching every one of them. I personally am matching 26 of them. But what does this mean, right? So we've learned that, quote unquote, they're not setting a bar of 30 centimorgans. And so we're probably maybe seeing more information than 23andMe would present. But because of this bankruptcy, it's now causing us to say, let's analyze what is being shared and what does it mean. So in MyTrueAncestry, these are the identifiers of each of the particular people. So this is 12 of them. And each of them are giving the same identifier number and the same haplog group from one system to the next. So I'm matching out of all of these numbers. At the end of that particular page, it does say, I do not match these two individuals. So out of all of the samples, it is showing me I am not a match to these two particular people, and they are women. So 23andMe, I didn't upgrade because I didn't feel I wanted them to have me pay $100 to see historical matches, and then you're now going to analyze my DNA for health reasons. I didn't need them to be my doctor. I just wanted the DNA. So I just was not willing to upgrade to see that I probably didn't have any matches. And now with the financial position that they're in, I'm personally glad I didn't. But still, there is some information on 23andMe about the Catoctin group that I was able to find that is very helpful, especially when we're trying to understand their origins of those of them who were analyzed. And I'll show that tonight in this slide. FTDNA. So I broke down and decided to do FTDNA because you can do a DNA test just like all the other testing platforms. You can upload your file from the other testing platforms into FTDNA. And the goal of that would be to see if the user set in this application, if you have any matches. At a minimum, let me see if there's matches. But I believe they've changed the makeup of the application where now in order to see people, you have to link it to MyHeritage. They're partnering with MyHeritage to see the tree. So that's what applications do. They integrate themselves with each other so that they don't have to have one development team or hire extra people to do the same thing when they can partner with a strong company that's doing one thing and then they do another, and they integrate those systems so that they can share the data in the database and the servers, and so make it easier for both companies. So FTDNA has decided to partner with MyHeritage so that they can see what we put in our tree there, and then they'll present it to us based on the matches in FTDNA. That's what it appears that they're doing. But in FTDNA, because they have the mtDNA. So with the mtDNA test, what that is they will show you your ancient matches, historical matches, using your maternal line. So I took a test for my maternal side. So my mother's side, my grandmother, her mother, strictly your maternal line. So FTDNA is using your mtDNA or your maternal line to determine if you are matching any of the ancient DNA they have in their system. So my brother could take a mtDNA test and it would show his matches from him through his maternal line, but his maternal line is my maternal line. And FTDNA does not use Y to do any matching. So for my brother, I chose to do the Y test. For me, I chose to do the mtDNA test. So FTDNA only had, from what I can gather, 22 kits out of the 28. Or maybe, and then for me, I only matched 11, which is still astounding when you think about it. And I'm going to talk about and break that down. So for mtDNA, after they process your data, it took me forever to get an understanding of their website, because on one hand, toward the bottom, they have origins. Then they talk about lower under see more ancient matches, but where the Catoctin and the ancient matches exist is in this section called Discover Your Haplog Group Reports. So they're going to be showing you, based on your haplog group, your ancestral connections. So once you click on haplog group, the very first option on the left, they're going to show you your haplog group breakdown. If you remember in 23andMe, they said my haplog group was L2C. In FTDNA, I apparently am L2C1. And I am going to talk about what I believe is the interpretation of this number. Because for me personally, I've been using a structured identifier for my family members for 36 years. I've been using something I didn't realize existed that was in this same context. So I'm going to break it down to where I believe what this means, how to interpret your haplog number. So if you look on the right, it's showing that L2C plus 93 is the person at the top. And then as it comes all the way down, then there is L2C1. And then all of the descendants under L2C1, that's where I would be living with my ancestral match. So we are descendants of L2C, and then L2C apparently had 93 kids, but that's my understanding of what that means. But I'll show later what I believe it means. And then, and at the bottom, what their website shows you is when you click on, when you start looking at the haplog group, the ancient matches, it's starting to show you the flow. So the flow from your shared ancestor of you and who you choose on this report to be able to see where do you match as far as an ancestral match and connection. So the first one on the middle is the highest match, the oldest shared match, shared ancestor. 2 is myself, and then 4 is this person that is this ancestral match that is being analyzed. Then in the timeline, it's showing you when they were born, when L2C was born, and then L2C had children, which is where L2A1I4 was born. And then as time progressed, the Catoctin Furnace person exists. So this isn't saying where I exist. Let's think about that, because I'm well after the Catoctin Furnace person, right? So, and one thing I do notice here, and you'll see in my other slides, these two don't cross. So we are literally the children descendants from the ancient person versus us crossing and sharing the same female ancestor and then breaking off from there. And you'll see that visual later. So my understanding of what the haplog groups represent. L is on the left. And how I liken this, when I start trying to identify huge family data sets, I had a grandfather who had 26 kids. And there was no way that I was going to be able, I didn't like the naming convention, which was 1.1.2.1. That boggled my mind because it was too many ones. It didn't, I understood how they were trying to represent it, but when you have a lot of kids, it visually wasn't connecting for me. So I created this same system for myself. Letter, number, letter, number. And each character represented a generation. So if L is where my haplog group, then we have A through K, which are the other individuals that are being represented. So if you are a T or you are an M or you are a P, then that's your ancestral line. So my ancestral line hit L. And when L had its first child, that's L1. Second child, L2, L3, and L4. When L1 had a child, that was L1A. L2 had a child, that was L2A. Then they had a second child, L2B. I would be L2C, a descendant of L2C. But we are still children. We are sibling descendants, which is why we would be related, right? In this hierarchy. So on the left nav, once you click on your haplog reports, you will see ancient connections. And it is in ancient connections where your mtDNA, your maternal matches to all of the ancient data sets that they have are presented. So everyone under this title of ancient connections, each of the individuals are my ancient matches. And what I was trying to understand, because of the Catoctin Furnace Project and what FTDNA was representing, hey, this is actually showing me being matching to the Catoctin Furnace people that have been researched. Let me understand what FTDNA is telling us. And so it has the same timeline. We're going to look at each of them. So I'm just sharing, I have 10 matches that are Catoctin, according to FTDNA. But please remember, this is my maternal line only. So from my grandmother and all of her maternal matches going far back until we hit L2A, L2B, L2C, and L2D, when you look at the bottom, you see this is saying L2A, tick L2B, tick L2C, L2D. This is basically saying that L2 had 4 children, L2A, L2B, L2C, and L2D. And I am a descendant under L2C. and the children that they have. Now, if that is not the representation, I will apologize now, but based on looking at all of these different haplog numbers, it totally makes sense if this is the breakdown that they're using. Because if I see an L2B, which you will see later, and it's saying I'm matching them because this ancestral connection is saying I'm matching these other people, and they have an haplog group that is a L2B or a different number under L2, now that clearly would make sense. So now I'm going to compare the three platforms. Even though I did not take a test at 23andMe, we had an opportunity working with Carla Wells, who is a descendant according to 23andMe, but she is a descendant as a cousin and not a direct descendant to the adults that were in the being researched. So at the end of the day, we know we're looking for cousins. So, but she is she's related, but not directly as a descendant of the adults that were researched. But when we looked at 23andMe, it gave a historical breakdown about that person that was taken from the report. And I'm going to highlight to you why that is so pivotal to understand and to see. Then I'm going to do a comparison between what MyTrueAncestry said, how I was matching 26 of the 28, but then Family Tree said I was matching 10 based on, and this is, remember, my maternal matches, because MyTrueAncestry is autosomal, just like Ancestry or MyHeritage. But Family Tree is FTDNA, strictly my maternal line. So when I look at it in that context, this is going to help me to say, okay, so you're matching me strictly on my maternal line. I can get that now. So this is group A. So when you know the data set that we've been looking at for months now, there are some people that were in the cemetery that are clusters of families. They are related. So the history you see on the left, I took from 23andMe, which was so cool because it highlighted a lot of data information that came from the report that was given to them. So I scarfed all that I could. So the summary of that is in red on the right. So this is a male, an African male. He's 88% African, 1% Indigenous American ancestry, 11% European. And toward the bottom of the paragraph, it started to say that his indigenous ancestry is inherited from his father. So siblings also had small amounts of indigenous ancestry. So this basically is saying that he is a male, but his mother is African and his father was indigenous American ancestry with some components of European. So that's so cool because, again, we know this came out of Frederick. So as we start analyzing the data set and the records and the information that we're looking for out of Frederick, that maybe we might be able to glean in this period of 1774 to 1850, who might this person might have been. So in group A, we have this person. Also in group A is this female who was an infant. So we're looking at two babies, a boy and a girl, 88% African, 9% European, 11% Indigenous American. And what's so cool looking at this, we started learning men pull more and genetic makeup than women. So the boy got 11% to 1% European to Indigenous American, and his sister got 9% to 3% European to 3% Indigenous. And also in group A is an African female who was 20 to 24. So her makeup was 89% African, 11% Indigenous American. So that's interesting because she does not have European. She does. Wait a minute. She has 89% African and 11% European. So she's not indigenous women. She did not have any indigenous Americans. So this is a typo on my half. That 11% is European for this 20-year-old. So basically, she got with someone who probably was European with some indigenous American, and her children had those breakdown in that makeup. And then this 1-year-old to 2.5-year-old was 94% African, 6% European. And this child had no indigenous American. And what's so interesting about this is something that really needs to be deeply analyzed. But we got to remember, if this is the family that was given to us by Harvard, and this is the research data set, DNA is distributed randomly. So we may not inherit the same genetic makeup from a sibling to another sibling. And this definitely could be a very strong representation of that. If this 1-year-old to 3-year-old toddler did not get any indigenous American, but those two makeups, European and indigenous American, came from the father. And this is the same family. And this was said both children carried at least one copy. So they are siblings. Then there was an African male who was 100% African male in this family data set. And he looks like he's probably a cousin, because it's saying 3 of his relatives, a mother and her 2 sons, were buried close by. So he came here, well, he was born probably strictly by African parents. So there's a story that starts to evolve that we can start seeing as far as when it came to Europeans who, whatever their makeup, started having relations with the slaves, and that breakup, that occurrence that was happening. This is family B. So now any of the letters at the top, you see that where it says B and a red, that's who I'm related to according to FTDNA. So remember I said, according to MyTrueAncestry autosomal, I'm matching all but 2. But from FTDNA, this is who I'm matching through my maternal line, strictly maternal line. Okay. So this particular person is a female, 100% African, who's 40 years old. And this time period is 1774 to 1850. So she definitely is, I would say, is someone who came here from Africa, because that's what this data set is saying. In her family, so this presentation is what FTDNA is showing me. So the first one is the view from 23andMe. So I wanted the historical background. But then FTDNA is saying this is the information we have about the 2 of you. And as you can see in the slide at the bottom, the timeline, L2B and L2C. So this is basically saying I'm L2C, and my oldest ancestor was L2C1, and we're sharing a parent or someone because we're crossing. We have now crossed, and I've crossed with L2B 1A3. And even though this is saying it was 6,000 years ago, it might have been 6,000 years ago for the ancestor, but Catoctin came into play in 1800s, late 1700s, 1800s. So we may be sharing our oldest ancestor, but somewhere this doesn't necessarily mean that I could be related, because this didn't cross again, I suppose. That's what this is saying. They're not carrying my L2C1 line further out so that I could see, did I in fact cross this Catoctin Furnace match or any of my other ancestral matches? And because they did not take my line all the way to 2000 so I could see what that makeup could have looked like, today, I don't know that we didn't cross. So I'm still looking because I have a genetic match to this person. In that same family is a 93% African with up to 77% Indigenous American. So there was no European with this person, and they was a 12-year-old, 12 to 13-year-old. And what was really cool on 23andMe, it started talking about what country, what origin they were from. So this is saying their 93% African heritage is coming from the Wolof and Fula people of Western Africa. So now I can get a little picture that, okay, this is a tribe where I'm genetically coming from, so that I'm now paying attention to my ancestral makeup, my origin makeup. I can now get a good understanding that because of this particular match, these are the people I'm descending from an ancestral makeup. And then this is that FTDNA component. Again, my L2C1 crossed L2B1A3. And then this showing on the timeline where the Catoctin Furnace, this person is represented. I wish it would show me my further line, my further number, but it's giving us a historical context. But if they would have brought that all the way forward, that would have, to me, been really visually interesting. And there may be an application out there that may represent that, right? I think they definitely have different reports in FTDNA where you can see your haplog groups and all of the people that are in there and that kind of thing. So this may not be the view for that. It may be in another component of the application. But this is person 8090 in that family. In family B, there was a 100% African who was a toddler. So now if this is a family, we're seeing the different makeup of these children. So this was a 12-year-old who was African and indigenous in family B. And then in family B, this is a 100% toddler. So this was that woman probably connecting with her husband or the person she may have been choosing to be with versus, unfortunately, being raped by someone and produced that other child. Also in family B is this person. Oh, this is family B representation from before. And again, notice how my line crosses their line. So I have to get a better understanding what that means from a geneticist. But I think it's still a strong, cool visual representation that our lines crossed. We crossed at the very beginning near L2B-C. Then it expanded, and then it came back down and crossed. And then it started to open up. So I think that high part is representing my point that do we ever cross again? But from this visual, I can't tell that. But this is family B. This is also family B. And in this particular family B, which was interesting according to 23andMe and the report that came from Harvard, this is a female who was not related to anyone. How? So that statement actually came from 23andMe's website and that information from the previous slide. But look at her haplog group. And so if I'm relating to all these other people, and then I'm relating to her, basically it's saying that based on the 28 people from the grave, they're trying to say she wasn't related, but look at the haplog groups. And then I'm relating to all of them according to my mtDNA. So I know that Shell used to be like, this doesn't make any sense. But when you really look at what these different sites are presenting and what this data set is saying, you scratch your head and be like, this doesn't make sense. We're from the same haplog group line. How is this person not related to the others? And that would be the question. Family C. So there were about 5 families and then some individuals. So it's really cool when you're able to see the picture of the family. So this is a 93% African male, 7% European, who a 15 to 16-year-old. This person inherited their African ancestry from the Lulua and Congo ethno-linguistic groups who live in present-day Angola and the Democratic Republic of Congo. So for my African breakdown, right? And we know for a fact these people were in Frederick, in Maryland, and especially if they were older. This person died young, but there are adults that are in these families who were older. Were there other children that I would be related to? And that story might be coming out of the 1870 census, when we start seeing people living who were finally freed on the census. So this is why, for me, it's important to understand the background, the genetic makeup, even of our ancient ancestors, and then studies like this. This is their genetic breakdown of our haplog group. My maternal line, all of this is maternal. So at some point, L2A, B, C, and D is represented here, but then L2C cross L2A. So now when I mentioned earlier, we're starting to see these different L2 numbers come into play. I'm L2C 1. This is an L2A, where before we saw someone who was an L2B. So what this is hinting, and this is not hinting, it's saying that when these people came here from Africa, they were siblings or cousins. They were in family sets and related, even if they were not in the same individual family. They were related. Group C, family C. So this is an 18 to 21-year-old African female, 6% European, 1774 to 1850. So probably came over here her mom came over here very early, and the mom could be in this data set. I don't have it. I think I have it based on age, but if not, in the family, there may be a 40-year-old male or an older adult, so we'll see. But this is their haplog group makeup, where me and this person, we cross L2C and L2A. So family C is an L2A haplog group family. And so like Donald, if Donald has done his mtDNA and FTDNA, and he knows what his haplog group is, when he sees this kind of report, will he also be in L2 in the same haplog group and that kind of thing? So then now we can see how we definitely may cross being related and set from an ancestral makeup. In family group C, this is the representation also of identifier 15339 that is in family C. This is family D. In family D, there's a 94% African, 6% European toddler. And then this is 100% African, who was 40 to 50 years old in family D. And I am related to this person, mtDNA. They inherited 100% African from the Mende and Creole people of present-day Sierra Leone, Liberia, and the Ivory Coast. So one thing that stands out to me, I'm going to go back to that slide, because this is what I hear, that if my ancestor on one of my grandparent lines from my 6th, 7th, 8th grandparent per se, if when they came over here in 1774 and they survived, and then I have DNA, which I do, DNA connections to cousins in Sierra Leone right now today, that I don't understand where this is coming from. To me, understanding and interpreting this information from these reports could strongly be helping me to understand this is my connection. Hands down, this is my connection. one of my connections. So now I can speak a little confidently and comfortably with someone that is in Sierra Leone. Because I know for a fact I had a 40 to 50-year-old male who died in Frederick, that maybe I can find out what that cousin's name is. And then from there, I can start looking for DNA matches with that cousin. This is maybe how we break through that brick wall that we might have, right? How we can connect this kind of data set to our DNA matches to see if we can now get a common name that makes sense. And then now we can bring those together. This is our haplog groups of that person, 8086 in family group D. This is also family group D, an infant that died who was a male. So the biggest stories I think we're going to get out of these older adults, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 30-year-olds. This was a female who was of European descent. One thing I would have to figure out, I do have Frederick matches on my mom's side and my dad's side. And my dad, I know for a fact, is Jamaica, Barbados, right? So it definitely could be that line that's connecting me in this way. I just messed up. This is a maternal match. This is not even a paternal match. This is my grandmother's, my mom's line. So I got to remember my mom has a dad. Nope. This is my mom's mom's mom. So that's what's really cool about the test. When you can just say, nope, not dad, not my mom's dad. It has to be a maternal, 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 strictly my grandmother's line. So this can help to pinpoint those connections. Group E, I am not related to. 3 to 4-year-old toddler, African male. I15336. Same group is another toddler, a female, African and European descent, and the boy was also. I am related to an individual, which is I8095, who was 100% African, 40 years old. And again, this person is from the Wolof and Fula. And I read that earlier, that they were relating to that I was related to those origins in those countries. And so therefore, given the fact that I was related to those origins in those countries, this is that same family. What was interesting, they're saying not closely related to anyone. And maybe they weren't closely related to anyone because it wasn't from their maternal side. Maybe I don't know, maybe that person was from their father's side. That's how we have to analyze what this information is saying to us. Because again, this is my maternal match. And they're showing us the haplog groups, right? So that means if the scientists are saying he's not related to anyone in the cemetery, but this DNA is relating to me through my maternal line. So maybe he's relating to people on his father's side in Catoctin, and that's why he's not relating to those people there, different tribes, maybe through his father, not through his mother, but because I relate to him through his mother, maybe that's why he's not closely related. I don't know what their interpretation of closely related is, but we have to let the DNA tell us the story, right? And so my goal is to say, with family tree DNA, if this is your maternal line, then this can help to tell the story of our maternal line. We are right now researching the 1700s to the 1850s. So this is not an unimaginable date for us to be researching anymore. We're learning how to match our cousins with our distant cousins with the proper ancestor in the tree. And maybe this can help try to bridge and give some definition to that person that we need to be connecting to. And this is, again, their haplog group, right? So this is showing that this person and me, remember my other haplog groups started crossing later in the 2000 BCEs. Me and this person, we go all the way back to the mother person, the first initial person on the list. I'm L2C1. They are L2A. So we're descending of the same woman, different lines, different siblings. And again, as I shared, the lines don't extend for me, which I wish it did, so that I could see if it ever crossed again. But we use what we have. This is an individual that I'm also relating to. This is out of FTDNA, and 23andMe did not have this person on their website. So I think 23andMe may have been short a few people, so I didn't have the historical context like the others. But this person on FTDNA that I'm relating to is supposed to be an individual not relating to anyone, but I'm relating to them on my maternal line. You can see my L2C1 group is well at the top, and they descend off of L2C all the way down to their haplog group in Catoctin Furnace. And then these are people that I have no DNA on my maternal side. What I took away from this is two things. This is going to be, it could be my mother's father. It could be, my father's line. So I can't say that this is strictly a father's match when I know that it could be my mom's dad or my grandmom's dad, because FTDNA is looking at the haplog group of your maternal line because of the test, the mtDNA test. So this is a 50 to 60-year-old African. They did not say what area that he was from. So, but he was 50 to 60-year-old. And very surprising to me that I wasn't relating to him at all. On my maternal side. This is I8088, a 16 to 17-year-old. And he was from the Mindi and Creole people of present-day Sierra Leone, Liberia, and the Ivory Coast. And he was African and European descent, 50%. That's very interesting, especially when we've been seeing 90% and 6% European, 90% European and indigenous. Why is his makeup so strong? What this would allude to me is that he's probably closer to the 1800s, and his mother was probably already mulatto mixed for him to have, and then she got with a European person. That's what this says to me, but he's not a DNA match to me on my mtDNA side. The next one was I8091, a 75% African female, 25% European, 75% African, and she was from Eastern people of Sierra Leone and Liberia. So the Harvard reports really started, for many of these reports, pulling out what countries they were from. And I think that's so pivotal, especially for us trying to figure out where we descend, exactly where, and through what people, not just the country, but the tribes or the locations in those countries. So for those of us researching out of Catoctin, and we're realizing based on our test, we are seeing a DNA match to some of these people. I think it's definitely, when we get to that point of research, can be something that can help us to figure that part out when you're interested in your African descent. I8094, 90% African, 10% European, and then the report said Great Britain, late teens and 20-year-old. And this is seeing the ethno-linguistic group out of Africa included the Mandinka of present-day Senegal and Gambia, and Congo of present-day Angola, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. His ancestors may have originated from multiple regions in Africa, later mixing in the Americas. And what's cool for me is I can say, I'm not relating to him. I do have European, descent, like many of us do. But, these are people that I'm not relating to my mother's side again. And I like constantly reminding myself of that because it helps me to remember to be focused on what is this data set I'm looking at? This is not autosomal. This is my mtDNA test, strictly maternal. So if I'm going to invest my money, $100 and something in this test, I need to make it make sense for me, and I need to use it for my research purposes because nobody got money to waste. And so if you have invested in these kind of tools, I'm just trying to make it make sense and break it down so that it can become of interest so that when you incorporate it into your research, you know how to decipher it, how to interpret it based on what I'm learning. I'm not a geneticist, but I'm very good at looking at data sets. That's what I do all day. I love pulling information together, analyzing it and interpreting it, and then making it make sense. This is I5333, 100% African female, 50 plus years old. So she definitely should have had family descending out of the Frederick Catoctin area. Congo ethno-linguistic area, Western Africa. Angola, Democratic Republic of Congo. But I'm going to tell you what just came to me. These places where these people are coming from in these time periods, we start looking at some of them ship manifests, and we know for a fact they're Maryland, and then they hit Frederick. At some point, this is going to start coming out because there's websites that tell us the ships and who was the cargo, who was the people on those ships, who purchased those slaves, and all we got to do, because the work has already been done, piece that stuff together. And that's why I got excited about wanting to present this, especially for us Catoctin Furnace Group, because that information is out there. And 23andMe presented it. So for my little money that I paid them, this is at least going to be helpful for me. And it's my prayer it's going to be helpful for you. Because being able to see the background of each person, and then we can analyze it in our own DNA, will help us to make this make sense. This I-15334, 100% African female. Oh, totally wrong. Total typo. Sorry about that. She was probably 100%. I don't see European in her genetic background. Entirely African ancestry. So sorry about that typo. She was not of indigenous American. She was 100% African. That's a typo. Last but not least, this is the visual. So Shell and the group have had the information from Harvard. We're not genetic scientists, but we can analyze the information to the best of our ability to try to make it make sense, right? And so in the spreadsheet that was put together, and I did some finagling on my own in this spreadsheet, I said, okay, based on everything that I just read, everything you see in red and in that red box are the family groups that I'm relating to. And now I'm able to see a visual of were they of European descent, indigenous American descent, and their ages and their mtDNA haplogroups. So I know that I'm L2, an L2 number. So maybe, so that L3 person that I have highlighted might be related to the family, but not relating to me. Because I've been able to see all of these L2 people that I'm relating to because I took this test. And so now I can understand where the family E, L3 family, I don't relate to. So my line 15 and 16 may be an error on my part that they should not be included in my research because they are L3s and not L2s. And so this is how I believe we make this make sense. And that's the end of my presentation for the night, guys. So question, I believe Shani came later. But any questions, reflections, interpretations?
Unintentional. So solid. Hi, sorry I'm late.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm good with the questions.
Okay.
I'll just look at it when you put it up.
Yeah, yeah. So I did a two-part. The first part was the 23andMe information. You should print out everything that is there based on the reports. But one thing I looked personally at today was that for my matches, when I went to the last page, they were like 9 cousins 2 times removed. And so I'm printing starting from the back, coming forward, because I feel it's very important to see those distant cousins that we're relating. And those are going to be probably the small centimorgans that Ancestry don't show, but 23andMe is showing. So I want to be able to see these people and then maybe search for them in all the other platforms or even Ancestry to see if they come up. Or if I have other cousins that relate to them, now it can make sense to me. So that was the first part of the presentation, just where to print. And mostly it was really about printing all of your reports out of 23andMe before you delete anything. And then this part was the Catoctin Furnace, where I compared all 3 applications of MyTrueAncestry, 23andMe, and FTDNA. So, Donald, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. I just wanted to add that my haplogroup is L2B for my maternal side.
There you go. We already know we cousins, so that makes sense, even from that far back. Very cool.
Yep.
Very cool. Emily, you cool?
Yes, I'm fine.
Was it helpful?
Yes, I did. I was printing off my documents. I'm an H though.
Ooh. Well, we don't connect on, so we definitely connect on my grandmom's father. So that makes sense to me.
Okay.
You definitely are my grandma's father. Stinson was my grandma's mom. But anyway, we gonna figure it all out. We have multiple connections, like all of
Yeah.
us do. Like all of us do. So I thank you for coming. I like to have a group when I present, and then I'll be sharing this tomorrow with everybody. It's only an hour long, so I think I'm gonna keep it together. I think I'm gonna just keep it together. It's only an hour long. But it combines both things so that at least I'm just trying to make sure people don't go delete stuff and then it's too late, where you can't get those reports out of there that they put together. But I'm glad I scarfed the information about the Catoctin people. And I guess we have to wait to see what the society says about what's going on with the Catoctin research. But I think personally we was always on our own. But so I thank you guys, and that's it for me. Monday, I am going to be doing that. You're welcome. Monday, I'm going to be doing the free persons of color, where we're going to be researching all of those A to C names. How are you relating? How are we all relating to the names to see if we can find our common ancestors? So this is about us collaborating together with the DNA matches to those names. So I won't bug you anymore this week. I'll do that on Monday, and we'll take it from there. So see you guys on Monday. Good night.